Greetings, everybody. For the purpose of this video, I'll keep my name anonymous. I'll do everything I can to keep my identity out of this, which is why, in case you were wondering, you see the camera focused on a bookshelf, but not on a hominid's face. As you know, many of you at least know, yesterday, on Wednesday, July the 26th, 2017, Trump announced his decision to ban transgendered people, transgendered Americans, from serving in the military. This hath come as not so much a surprise to many, but it is a move that is most unwise on his part, unfortunate, and far riskier than letting those of us who are gender different, who are willing and able to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, to do so. I can understand from one perspective how many might feel that this decision on his side was simply idiotic, and many might feel safer or safest in viewing the GOP amongst those who support him as either just idiots or worse. But I don't think if those of you who are amongst the GLBTQ, etc. community could forgive me for so saying. I don't think that Mr. Trump is a bad person. I also don't think that that most of those who are amongst the Republican Party who do support him actually are necessarily bad people. And in either case, those who choose to support his decision amongst those in Congress and Washington, D.C. will find that it will prove their undoing. And perhaps at some point the Republican Party's undoing, as it currently stands, because I can assure you that there are transgendered Republicans in America. There might be fewer than there are transgendered people amongst the more progressive parties, but there are conservatives amongst Americans who are in the gender different community, whether they are out or not. And eventually, if Mr. Trump chooses to follow through with keeping transgendered Americans, his fellow Americans, amongst the transgendered community from serving openly in the military, he will find that it will have been much riskier for him to actually implement than paying for their medical costs. I also feel that his decision, even though I do not support it, comes not from the mind, the soul, or heart, or character of a bad person. I think with due respect to those who may feel supremely hurt, angered, oppressed, or similar from his choice, that he is doing it from the perspective and through the lens of someone who has also, in different ways, been battered, and shattered by having to deal with someone in his life who taught him to think less of himself and others if they did anything but succeed. To think less of anybody who wasn't successful according to the measure that person or persons taught him to be was successful. And I feel, having read his article, the article where he mentions some of his thinking behind choosing to begin the process of banning transgendered people from serving in the U.S. Armed Forces, I feel that it comes from someone who has so hyper-focused in for so long on mere victory that he sees anything other than what he can overtly see as the best, quote unquote, the best and most stable. People in the military as a threat to the armed forces, our armed forces' potential victory. And I disagree with him in thinking that someone or someones who are of the transgendered community are necessarily automatically a threat or a distraction or anything other then valid members of the armed forces, assuming they were in fit enough shape to be admitted in the first place. I understand to a slight degree where he's coming from, because at one time I was someone who could not intellectually wrap my mind around the existence of transgendered people, or around the idea of someone effectively, as far as I could see it, that at that time arguing with genetics. It took for me, when I was younger, or rather when my body had fewer years on it, and I was still evolving out of emotionally being an old fart in a body with fewer years than I currently have. It took for me to realize when my body was 17 that I wanted to be Prince Charming when I grew up. For me to understand something closer to begin to internally understand a little bit closer to that inner reality. It was at that time that I began identifying within myself as bigendered, and I was 22 before I came out to anybody as identifying that way. And if I had not dealt with that, I might be as closed-minded about it. As many in the hetero, comfortable in sex community. Maybe. But I did go through it, and I'm not as close-minded about that particular reality as I used to be. And I feel that as a bisexual, biromantic, gender different American, that if those in the GLBTQ community want to make a positive difference in opposition to Trump's decision, in order to oppose his anger and his tirades, in whatever ways we do it, in order for it to be effective in the long run, it'll have to be peaceful. because many people, and I feel Mr. Trump is among them, are doing this not just to be assholes, if you'll pardon my Norkish, but because they don't know. And until I went through certain things, I was one. That's why I think that. Bless you. And whomever of you are listening,